of what we did at the last clinic. So this is clinic 2. This is high-end glide, and I'll just review the other stuff. So right now I'm using a stiff metal bristle brush to get out any dirt or oxidation or anything like that out of the ski. I really like this brush because it pulls a lot of wax out of these things. You can see how much I get out of here. And these have been skied actually quite a bit. So there you go. I got all the gunk out.
Does that take like the base wax out as well, or?
It takes, you know, the wax is in the base. It's in the pores of the base. So we should. Some of you do. Was everybody here at the last one, or just
No,
two? You were and Jack, you were, right? So we'll touch on it a little more in depth then. So I don't have anything up here.
Yours brush one way.
But let's go like this.
Tips sticking
I just cut the ski in half. Now we're going to look at it from the core. So this is the core of the ski. That's the cap. Okay? And core, and then this is the base. Okay? So in the ski, here's your pores, way down deep in the base, and then everything here is the structure. So if you look at your ski, that's structure in your ski. That's what the base looks like. It's like a wood grain, okay? And that's what this is. That's what moves the water, okay? So when you're gliding on here, you're creating water because there's friction, and that's what you're gliding on. And so your structure moves the water out of the way. And long story short, the faster you get the water out of the way, the faster you go, okay? There's lots of other factors in between, and that's kind of what we're going to get into tonight. But that's basically the gist. You melt your wax on top. The wax goes down into the structure and the pores of the ski. Okay? Then your scraper comes along and cuts all the wax off the top that you're not going to use. Then your brush comes along and gets the structure clean. Okay? So the only wax that's really left is down here where your brush can't reach. Okay? So when I go over with a metal or copper brush or steel brush, what I'm doing is I'm getting any dried, flaky base, we're making it go away. We're getting rid of it. And then we're getting rid of any wax that may happen to be there. So it's more of a cleaning process. This brush is also really good when you have a really hard wax, which we just so happen to be using a lot this year. So this is my favorite. Will that Toco brush work? Absolutely. The Toco copper brush is a great brush. I used that for years. This is actually fairly new. This is something that came out last year, and he gave me one, and that's what I've been using since last season. So, good brush. So, after you get this clean, then you can put your wax on. You just pick your wax of the day. You drip that guy on there. Maybe I should do that. Grab a wax. Let's see, what temperature? Cold? Probably.
It's dropped. Today was warm. It's dropping now.
I think we'll probably go.
Isn't it?
We'll probably go
It's gonna be
cold.
like high as 17.
Let's see what I got here. Something cold. Grab one of these. This is cold. Alright. Cold wax. So all you do is you take your iron. I have it set to about 130 degrees Celsius. 140 is the max this iron goes to. This iron's been used a lot, so they don't always look like that. Every year I get a new iron in the basement because it gets used quite a bit. You melt your wax on there, and you just drip it on. When it's a cold wax, I'll just drip it on, and I'll take care of it while it's still kind of molten. Okay.
More wax on than I do. That's what I noticed last time.
Well, wax is really expensive, first of all. So some people have different techniques. They'll do the rubbing crayon, and that works. All that works. Again, you're getting wax down into the base. When you're putting on cold wax, you're using a really high temperature, and it's a good idea to have a little more wax on there so you don't burn your base. As long as you keep your iron moving, you're okay.
Mine's an old General Electric with no temperature control.
You know what? Start with what you can, and
Or limited, I don't know what the temperature is.
yeah, I mean the key to the iron that's not a wax iron is keep the thing moving. Don't let it sit anywhere. You don't know where the temperature is, so if it's smoking, and it usually is when it's soft wax, you'll see this big billow of smoke. Just turn it down a little bit, and a lot of times you'll still get that because you can't really control what the thermostat does. Because here, this thermostat checks itself every 5 seconds. That thermostat checks itself every minute, and it doesn't care because. Silk doesn't care what the temperature it's really at, just as long as you don't burn it, So just keep that iron moving and never let it sit for too long. Here, when you're melting cold wax, you'll have about an inch of molten wax following your iron. And really that's about all you need. If it was a warm wax that I was applying, it might be the whole ski that's molten when you're done. And on a warm wax, I'd run a more medium temperature on the iron, just because you don't need all that heat. So what's the difference between warm wax and cold wax? Does anybody remember that from last week?
It's harder, isn't it?
Right, yes. Cold wax is harder. So your base, if you go back to my hand diagram, when you get cold wax way down into the base, your base is hard. Your base will take on the property of the wax that you use. So soft wax equals soft base, which is fine when it's warm and there's lots of moisture. It helps you move more water. When it's cold and abrasive, and we have snow that's new and sharp, like this, for example. Where is it? Oh, I lost it. Oh, there it is. So that's just one example of a snowflake. There's so many different kinds. Basically an infinite number of shapes. But when it's new, it's all pokey. Okay? So pokey equals abrasive equals slow ski. So you got to find a way to combat that. There's also, when it's new, if it's cold out, there's not going to be a lot of moisture in there either. So it's better to make your base hard than move water, because you're not going to be producing a lot of water as you glide over that snow. So like, has anybody been out lately and noticed how slow it's been? It's been like sandpapery. That's because the snow is so sharp and there's so little moisture in the snow that it's almost like sandpaper. It's gripping your ski. And so the only way to combat that is really to just make your base really hard and use very little structure. Okay? And we'll get into structure. That'll be the next thing. Take that, Jackie.
So it's just a wooden dowel.
You can actually,
I got some
a
plastic.
Bic pen with the guts ripped out works really well.
Ah,
But this is a Toko groove pin scraper. And it just helps you get out all the little gunk, and it's ovalized, so it'll work on any groove that you have in your ski. So as I scrape here, really I'm not trying to get every little bit of wax off of here. I'm cutting off that top layer of wax, okay? not pressing very hard. The harder you press, the more likely you are to take off some base with the wax, and you don't want to really do that. You'll have little patches here that some get scraped more than others, and you just touch that up a little bit. See that little extra wax come off there? And that's all there is to it. Yeah, I always kind of run a little angle. And the reason I have it angled away from me when I'm scraping is because if I'm pushing like this, there's a chance that I'll catch an edge and I'll gouge my own ski. So if you hold it angled away from yourself and you use it like a barber's razor, you're just cutting the wax off. It's important to have a sharp scraper. So if you get a scraper sharpener, or if you don't have a scraper sharpener, just get a new scraper every, like this year I'd get one every 2 weeks, probably 3 weeks. Just depends on.
Can you just follow the edge of that?
You can.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. If you make yourself a little miter box with a file at the bottom, just with a 90-degree edge, you can rub your scraper back and forth and the file will keep it flat and it'll keep it sharp. So, and really, if you look at some of the scraper sharpeners on the market, all it is a miter box with a big old file at the bottom. All right, so after you get your wax scraped, then you brush, and again, we're getting all the structure open to move the water. And okay, so this is the only brush you want to go back and forth with, okay? The white nylon from Toco. I wouldn't do it with any other nylon brush either. Okay? See, I'm pushing pretty hard, and I'm going pretty hard here, and as you see, I'm not really getting a whole lot of the wax off, okay? This is a very hard wax, and sometimes these bristles don't do the trick, and that's when I go to, hey, this guy. There you go. That's why I like this one, because this comes right out. See that?
So now, I do that with like a horsehair brush?
You can do it with a horsehair, you're just going to have a hard time with some of the hard waxes. Sometimes, but you can use a horsehair. I mean, if you have a softer bristle brush, it's just going to take you...
It's more work to get it out.
Yeah, it just takes you a little longer, that's all. There you go.
Would you mind, what was the material of that last brush and what's the material in this brush?
That was a stainless steel brush, a metal brush, and this is a horsehair. So I'm just kind of showing you the difference. Like, you still get a lot off with the horsehair too. All right. So that's really basic glide wax on and off. And then you can take this ski and go and ski on it now. And
You don't use a polish brush?
you can use a polish. It depends on how much wax you want to get out of it. If it's a race or something, polishing brushes work great, and you can take skis out and leave them in the cold, and the pores will contract in the cold, and it'll actually push more wax out. And so if you brush them when they're cold, you'll get more wax out. So that's a little trick.
Do people do that then before?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you should throw your brush in the bag.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can do it. You can just leave them out in the car or something. If you're going to a race, leave them in the car and go register or whatever. And when you get back, they'll be cold enough.
That's a good point. What about changing waxes? So you wax for cold because it's a cold day, and then
it warms up. So then you just brush with your guy to clean out whatever's there. There might be nothing, but you just run over it with this, and then you go right to your warm wax. Some people like to do warm scrapes in between, molten wax, and then you scrape and it gets gunk out, but it's really not necessary. Some people will take base cleaner and they'll try to clean it out, but again, not necessary. Anytime you take a chemical to clean it, you're stripping all the wax out of it. I mean, it goes into the pores of the base. And
good idea.
I don't like it. There's some people that do it all the time. I just think I just spent all this hard work putting all this wax into this thing. Why do I want to take it all out of it, So that's my thought on it. So,
But going soft over hard and then back hard over soft and all that doesn't,
it's not really that big a deal unless you're doing a really long event or something. Then you want to build waxes, and that's why, like if you look at the race this week,
Right.
they're telling you to probably layer waxes. Like Badger State, it's LF blue and HF blue with hard powder, and then Jetstream over the top. Well, why all these different waxes? Because they're hardening the base, and then dealing with dirt and moisture. So it's a process. Okay, and it does work. It helps your wax last a lot longer. So if you're doing a marathon, it's important. If you're going to lap and peak to go around 2 blacks, that whatever, you know. Don't worry about it. Go ski. Throw 1 layer on and go ski.
I noticed you didn't spend too much time pressing the wax into the ski. I tend to go back and forth and really press the wax in. You dripped it in and went one time on the wax, and
Yeah.
it seemed like you hardly spent any time just pressing it into the.
No, when you say pressing, you mean like
Melting it in.
run it over a couple times?
Yeah, and pressing too. I would put some
pressure.
pressure on the iron, and I guess that's it. You didn't. I noticed you just went a very short time
Yeah.
with the iron on the wax.
When that iron's on the wax, that wax is molten and it's going to go into the base.
There's no need for pressure or repeated stroke or repeated.
No, if you repeat, you can repeat. You really don't have to push on your iron. You can just go over it 2 or 3 times, and that's just going to open up the base more. Okay, because every time you're putting wax on here, your base is expanding, and all those pores are expanding and contracting, you know, as they cool. So the more passes you make, the wider that pore is, okay, and it'll take more wax. As it contracts, it pushes wax out. So like Toko, they'll recommend you let the ski cool and everything before you move on to the next step, because they're allowing the ski time to cool, and it'll push out all the wax that it's not going to use, and then you scrape it. And then you move on to the next wax, and you're repeating that process. You're pushing wax into the base. The reason I don't spend a lot of time on it is because these skis have been hot boxed, and boy, I don't know if there's any more wax that can go into these things. You know what I mean? There's a lot of wax in these spaces.
so when I got new skis, they did that.
Yep.
And that whole process just puts in a base wax?
Yeah, it puts in a lot of wax. So the whole, what we were just discussing, making several passes to open up the pores, that's called soaking. Okay? Soaking works well, and before people started this hot box thing, that was the best thing. Now, hot boxing, it's in an oven for 6 hours. You know? So the pores aren't going to get any wider than that, you know? And then you turn off the hot box, and the hot box cools very slowly, and so it's slowly contracting over 3 or 4 hours, maybe if you leave it overnight, 6 to 8. And so when you get back, there's just no more wax you can really force into those pores. They're very saturated, and then you scrape that and brush it out. And when you saturate something like that, it's easier to get more wax in there, okay? And that's why they do that. So now every wax you put on after that is going to be further in your base.
It's something to grab onto.
Yep.
Does that ever have to be repeated or reconditioned or anything?
So race teams will travel with what they call a bag, which is basically a hot box that's folds up, and they'll do it all the time. You'll see when you watch the Olympics this year, and when the Olympic venues come up, they'll show you all these shots of the guys getting ready. Just look behind the racers, and you'll see hot boxes and techs, and the team will be freaking out, and there'll be 15 pairs of skis on the wall, and you know that's what the techs are doing. That's what I used to do years ago. As I was a wax tech, so.
I noticed you didn't establish a kick zone or differentiate any of the area of the ski in any different way. Is that true or not?
Not on this ski, because this is a skate ski. So had I been doing a classic ski, let's go to Jackie's skis. So Jackie has a waxless ski though, so we wouldn't be doing any any I love it. We wouldn't be doing any kick prep. But basically what I just did on that other ski, you would do to the tip and the tail. So your question was, how do I wax them? You would only glide wax the tip and the tail. That's it. Your kick zone's mechanical, so you never have to kick wax it or anything. If this were a waxable ski, I would put a piece of tape here and a piece of tape right here if that was my marked kick zone. And that way I can melt wax there and not worry about it going into this area. Okay, and when I prep a kick zone, I take sandpaper and I go sideways in it. And that helps your kick wax last longer. So you sand your kick area, okay, then you run over it with a base cleaner to get all that gunk out. And then you start with a base wax. You put on your Toco green, and then you take your iron and you melt it in. And then you cork it in. So that's what you do for your kick area, if you had a waxable. With this, you just glide wax and go. So I love waxless skis, especially the new ones. The new ones they work really well. And if you don't have time to futz with wax, like
I used to think they gave you more drag.
It does, yes, it does. It slows you down a little bit. So that's what you got to ask yourself. What's more important to me? Am I going out and having a good time and kicking, or am I racing? Because if you're racing that day, 90% of the time your waxable is going to be faster. So there you go. Any questions about the basic on and off? All right.
That's it.
All right. That's the basic on and off. Yeah, it's really. It's really
What about applying floor waxes over the top?
So that's what we're getting into.
Oh, good lead in.
Perfect.
That was a refresher for an hour.
Yeah. So there's two parts to this whole high-end race wax thing. There's your structure, and then there's your wax. So if we look at the screen here, I have that kind of illustrated with this. I'm blocking the signal. Oh, I lost it. Oh, there it is. All right. So your structure. So if we had a snowflake like this, and we looked at the structure of our ski. So this is a downhill ski, I know, but it's the same principle. So here we have our ski that's chopped in half again. It's just the right way. So new snow under here, under this base, if you had a very smooth base, not a lot of structure, it's going to be faster. So imagine if that base actually did look like fingers. So now all the snow fingers, all the snow structure is going into your ski, and it's actually creating more surface area and more friction and slowing you down. So that's why they do different base grinds. So there's ways you can do it at home, and there's hold on, where are you at?
Do you want me to hit the button for you?
No,
I'm on the computer.
I got the I'm using there we go. All right, so where is it? Where are you at? There we go. All right, so this is what it looks like under a microscope. So on top you have your fine structure, and on the bottom you have your coarse. Most of what we have around here is in the middle there. It's the medium to fine grind. Okay? So let's say you have all this new snow. If you have a structure like on top there's not a lot of surface area for those new things to grab onto. Okay? But as you go down to the lower coarse structure, that's for moving a lot of water. So if it's very humid or wet, like it is tonight, tonight's a really wet night out there, sloppy, that might be a good structure, if there's a lot of humidity. So, you know, there's two ways to put structure in your ski. There's you stone grind it, so you actually go to a store or a ski place that does grinding. And I don't have a stone grinder up there, but there's actually a big round stone, just like a grinder in the shop, that spins, and then your ski goes over and it actually cuts a structure into your ski. Okay? And you can have them cut any of those structures. Here in Wisconsin, I really like the fine structure because we have cold weather, we have new snow, we have hard base. It works really well. So what happens if you get your skis ground that way and it warms up? Well, then we have these awesome tools, structure tools, okay? And this is my favorite. And Toko has a new version of this, but this is cool. It has a little bit in it. It's a little roller that has teeth in it. And it presses a structure into your base. So here, I think this is the coarse structure, but you guys can pass it around and look at it. And basically all you do is you put it on your ski and you push it down your ski, and then it presses a structure into the base. So you guys can check that out. I'm not really going to do it right now because it's so cold. I don't want to slow it down. I'm already slow enough. I'll do them on the classic there. I'll put it on the classic one.
So you can do this over and over and over?
Over and over and over, because you're not cutting your base. You're pressing into your base. So remember how I said your base will expand and contract when you iron it? So you run over it with an iron 2 or 3 times, and that pattern will disappear. And there's lots of new structure tools that are even a little nicer than these now, and have very big rollers, so the pattern's a lot different. Here, I'll press some into here so you guys can see what it looks like here. Alright, put that tool on there, you push. We're just pressing in a structure. And then this is how it originally looked. And then you can see right there. See that? See that?
Yeah.
And so that just breaks the suction of the extra moisture. So
That's after you wax or before?
that's after you wax. So after you get done with the high-end wax, this is like almost the last thing you do. And so there's a lot of debate about this. Is it the best way to do it? No. Stone grinding is the best way, where the structure is cut into the ski. So remember the Olympics? Remember the guys in the background? That's what those 15 different pairs of skis for that one guy are for.
They're all ground different.
They're all ground differently. They all have different wax on them. They all have all that. They're prepared basically for any.
So dial in what's the one that's going to work today.
Right, exactly. And you know, racers, they'll always go with what's fastest. So I think the best race I ever had was Badger State Games. I won one year, and it was on my crap ski because it was moving faster than my good skis were. So, I mean, it really is. It's whatever is working best is what they use. So
The stone grinder, that's done before you wax? That's like actually changing
it actually
base?
changes your
Or this just kind
structure.
of change the wax kind of?
Yeah, all we're doing here on the workbench is we change wax or we press structure in. We don't cut away. The old way to do it, there'd be real bars and you'd be actually cutting your base, okay? Or there would be tools similar to this, but it was basically a tool with a file in it, and when you pushed, you'd cut base away. And so you could only really use that tool, you know, a dozen times,
Start eating away the bases.
and then you're in trouble, you know? So only the guys who really could afford a lot of skis would do that. They'd alter their own structure and go from there. And I recommend the rollers. They work much better. So
And it doesn't, you can do that indefinitely, you're saying.
Do it 100 times, it's no big deal because you're just pressing into the base. And so the heating will expand it and it'll disappear over time.
And you always do that after you're finished waxing.
Yep. Yeah, it's actually a step if you look at Toco wax recommendations. It's one of the very last steps in the wax process. They'll say use fine structure right bit, make 3 passes with the structure right tool, da 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 da. So it's actually...
It seems backwards because you said earlier that you're putting wax into the structure.
Right.
You just want it to stay at the bottom.
Right. That's why I was...
Wax into it.
Again, that's why all those 15 pairs of skis are back there, you know, so they can test them and see what's going fastest with those snow conditions.
Would you recommend doing a stone ground maybe once a year, if at least, or?
Only if your skis get scratched or damaged or something. When you have like a big scratch in your skis, then that's a place for water to kind of pool up, and that'll create more suction and slow your ski down.
Do they repair them like a
Yes.
spot where some of the P-Tex seems
Yep.
it's
Yeah, then you,
gouged?
absolutely. You can do base welds or you can do P-Tex candles to fix that. And a lot of them you can fill in. Some of them you can't. When you fill in or fix, it's not going to take wax in that spot anymore. But you're still moving the water instead of letting it pool.
So is that something like at the beginning of the season or something, for him to say, Matt, do something with these skis to get ready for this season?
Yeah, if you bring them in, I can tell you if they need to be ground or not. A lot of times they don't. I mean, if like racing's going to be your thing, go get, and you don't have 4 pairs of skis, go get a fine grind on your skis and a structure right tool and go race. And when you need structure, you add. It's the simplest way to do it.
Is there any way for an amateur to tell if they need to get a stone grind?
Oh yeah, you can see if there's big gouges in your skis.
I mean, it's only gouges. What about what if you've lost your structure and it's all worn, it's just basically worn off from friction, and you have no structure there in the in the surface of the.
You're always going to have structure. It just depends on how fine it is or how coarse it is. There's always something. There's always like a wood grain there, even in like the cheap skis, you know.
That doesn't typically wear off with use.
No, you'll always have. There'll always be something on your glide zones. I have seen mechanical kick areas wear down to nothing, you know, because somebody's on a ski that's too soft for them, so that it's always dragging, you know. So I've seen that wear off, but not really your structure, you know. Only scratches and stuff like that. So, all right. So, floral waxes. So the high floral is just like a paraffin. So just like we just did, there's no difference. All right. The pure florals, these things.
You can put it on this liberally.
It depends on. There used to be old kinds that were powders, and the powders you'd sprinkle a whole heck of a lot on because you were ironing them in. Now you don't really iron stuff in anymore. You can. You just be real careful, move your iron quickly, but they tell you to do rotocorking.
With the high, not you're talking the very high floral.
Yeah, the pure floral stuff.
Okay. But the low floral you do melt in.
Yeah, you do it just like we did the basic wax procedure. So.
Can you review when to use a floral wax?
So fluorocarbon waxes are used when there's high moisture in the snow. So 70% moisture, you can do a low floral wax, which is what we were talking about. Especially for really cold weather, because there's something that's called floral drag. If you have too much fluorocarbon in cold weather, it'll actually slow your ski down. That's why they're recommending LF instead of HF. Anytime you're over that in humidity, 75 and higher, then there's so much moisture in the snow that a high floral will work better. Fluorocarbons, all they do is repel water. That's all they do, and dirt. So for marathon races, long stuff, the track might be dirty, you You know, it's a long way, and so you're going through all these woods with pine needles and sap and, you know, who knows what in the snow. So this just keeps your skis moving. Okay, moves the moisture, keeps them clean, because it repels all that stuff. So high moisture, high floral, or pure floral.
Is there a way to get feedback on the moisture content of the snow? How do you know? Are there typically metrics posted about how wet the snow is?
Yeah,
or?
if you look at just regular humidity, okay, and think about temperature the day before. Was it really cold? Okay, then there's probably less humidity in the snow than there is the air. And if it's consistent, like the temperature hasn't fluctuated a lot, then it's probably whatever the humidity says it is. So if I look on, when I'm doing a Berkey recommendation and I look at where the humidity is for the race, I'll look at the day before as well. I'll say, what's it on Friday? You know, because if it goes from, you know, 30 degrees to 7 degrees, race is at 7 degrees when I start, there's still going to be a lot of moisture in the snow. Okay, if it's 7 degrees the day before the Berkey, okay, and then it's 20 degrees the day of the race, there might not be as much. If it's only 60% humidity on race day, there's probably less moisture in the snow than that, you know. So it's kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, and that's why these guys make it sound so hard, you know. There's just a lot to look at.
Like this year, it's been really cold.
Yeah,
So even though today warmed up a little bit,
yeah.
the snow is still pretty cold.
It might be cold.
And less humid.
Yeah. So let's say last night was, what was last night? 7, 5, somewhere in there. And today it's 20 degrees. I'd probably still wax for
For a cold day.
12 degree snow, you know, because it's harder snow.
Yeah.
You can't really go wrong going colder. You can definitely mess up if you go warmer. That's when you can really mess up.
So is there a standard formula that you can use when you just look at the weather forecast or the weather from yesterday, not focusing only on humidity, but how do you predict which wax you should use based on the weather forecast for the current day or the day previous?
Yeah. So I'll look at the 2 days. I'll look at the day before and the day I'm skiing. What's the temperature the day I'm skiing? What's the temperature the day before I'm skiing? And then, you know, if it's fluctuated a lot, I'll kind of err one way or the other. And then I'll go from there. If it's really consistent between the 2 days, then I'll forget what happened the day before, because it's kind of a moot point. There's no big fluctuation. I mean, 2 or 3 degrees, that's no big fluctuation. And I'll just look at that day. What's the temperature? What's the humidity? And then that's what I'll wax for. So high humidity, cold day, then it'll be a high floral wax. High humidity, warm day, it'll be a high floral wax. It'll just be for warmer temperatures.
So you typically put the floral wax on, then above you put a glide on earlier at the beginning of the waxing session today, right?
Yep.
And then you would follow that up with a fluorocarbon.
Yep.
I see.
Yeah, so you layer them. If I was going to do a race, it would be low floral, high floral, pure floral. So that would be my race day stuff.
Do you always put floor on for a race day?
That's a really good question. No.
Not if it's cold. And
If
not
it's
dry.
really cold, then there's that thing called floral drag, and it actually slows you down a little bit.
So I got the impression when the guys that ski with that the floral waxes cost more,
Yeah.
therefore they use
They
them
should
on
be
race day.
faster.
Yeah, they should be faster,
Yeah.
use them on race day.
They shouldn't be faster. This is how Swix and Coco sell wax at the Berkey. It's fluorocarbon. You got a race tomorrow. You want to have your best Berkey. You need this. Okay, that's how they sell you the wax. There was a Berkey, actually not 2 or 3 years ago. It was really cold.
3 years ago.
Yeah, and they were saying low floral, baby. Don't put high floral on your ski; it'll slow you down. So there's times it happens, and more in Europe than in the States, though. Over there, there's you know, they have some really cold days, or up in Alaska, you know, they don't really use fluorocarbons up there. So yeah, that's basically how you determine what wax to use, you know. So, any other questions about that?
So all the companies, Tokyo or Swix, they're basically all the same.
They'll all have their own different formulas, and I'm not a chemist, so I don't,
Yeah.
I can't get into it. I've seen it. So does anybody remember Eric Middlestead from years ago? He used to work for Doc. That was that era where we had all those racers in house that were just rocking it. And he showed me, he was good friends with Ian Harvey, who's an Olympic biathlete, and that's the guy who runs Toko USA. And so I've seen, Eric was a Toko team member, and he had the Toko Bible, and that thing was this thick. And that actually went into the chemistry of the wax, and I was, of course, but they can break it down to the molecule and what it does. And I don't really understand.
Well, it's kind of the same concept of the low fluoro, the high
Yeah,
fluoro.
they all have their own formula. It's just like Coke or Pepsi. You know, it's both a cola, but, you know, one mixes better with, you know, brandy or whatever. You know what I mean? So, they're all going to have their conditions that they work better in. So, like, you'll always hear people talking about Rex Green or Rex Blue or Start Green, or, you know, those are great for cold weather. And then Toko tends to be more of a really medium to warm temperature wax. And Swix, they tend to be kind of a medium to colder temperature wax. But if you learn how to use their systems, whatever it is, so if you stick with Swix or you stick with Toko or you stick with Fast Wax or whatever, Vaudi or whatever you use, Home and Pull, as long as you stick to it and you learn the system really well, you can make your skis perform really well in pretty much any conditions. Get used to what works at what temperatures and what snow conditions and what doesn't. So I've been really fortunate. I've worked for 2 wax companies that were completely different, and then I've had friends who were Toko team guys, and I've used a lot of Toko and Swix over the years, and so I've just been really fortunate to be exposed to all that. So
You started to say on the high fluoro, you don't iron that again.
you used to.
Yeah.
It used to come in like a powder,
Yeah.
or guys would break up this, which I've
I mean,
actually
that stuff is like
done.
lots of money for little.
It is, yeah.
So you just rub that on?
You just rub a really thin layer of this gunk on here. So you can barely even see that it's on there, but it's on there. You don't want it bunching up, and you want it to be really uniform layer, because if you have a bunch of pure floral here, and then you skip a part of your base, and then you have pure floral here, then you'll have a bunch of pooling water here. It's like a brake. It'll slow you down. So when you're putting this stuff on, consistency is the key, and keeping it uniform. So it doesn't have to be a lot of this stuff. It just has to be a nice, even.
Do you iron that in then?
So now what?
You can iron it in, okay? I was kind of hoping I had, let me see if I still have it here. I might be out of it. I was going to do the Fast Wax one, because that's the one you can. So you know what? Can you grab me? Because I'll use it. The Flight Arctic, I believe it's 12 and colder. Or it's colder than that. It's the Arctic, the white one. Grab me that one. So where's my roto cork here?
You just put something on there. You can put something different on top?
I will. I'll show you.
Yeah, 5 to 18.
518. That's what it is. There you go. And then can you run down and get my roto cork? Thank you. Sorry. I thought I had everything up here, and I'm looking for my roto cork. Now I don't have it. So you used to iron this stuff in when it was a powder. You can still run your iron over, and for downhill they'll tell you to do that. And And see how quick I went over that? And it basically just smears it. Okay? And then after you let that cool a second, then you'll have your dedicated brush on these, and you'll see these guys work this powder up and get it out, and then they'll grab their thermal pad or whatever, and then they'll apply. And that's the real basic process of putting this stuff on. The thermal pad just heats stuff up, and
Is it like the little cork pads or?
yeah, it's similar. Yeah.
So the dedicated brush, what's that made of?
This one's a nylon, but you can use a dedicated horsehair or whatever. Did you find it? Awesome. So what Toko and Swix and all those guys tell you to do now is on your ski, because when you're running 200 degrees, and this one goes to 150, you know, some of them go hotter. But when you're running such a high temperature, you know, you risk melting your base. I mean, at some point, this plastic's going to melt. At some point, the glue that holds this whole thing together is going to melt and let go. So that's really the danger.
And the high floors need a higher temperature to melt?
Yes. Yeah, they bond at a really high temperature, and I'll show you that with that Arctic, how it works, okay? So you always want your roto cork spit in the wax in whatever direction the tail is, all right? Same with any roto brush you use, all right? Then you want to use like a medium speed as opposed to like full on. So some drills actually have settings, and you always go to like a medium setting. And all you do, go back and forth, nice and gentle.
So that's just a cork that's like generating friction to.
Yeah. And actually, if you come up here, you can feel it swarm. Yeah. So you see all those marks? That's the wax being smeared as it melts. And then you take your dedicated brush, whatever it might be, and that's when you brush out the excess.
So you're saying that when you say dedicated, you mean you don't mix a fluorocarbon brush with a standard wax brush?
Right. They tell you to keep it as uniform as possible. Remember the whole uniformity thing? And so if you're taking a brush you use with paraffins and you're running it over your fluorocarbon, you'll create maybe a pocket where the wax can slow you down or whatever. So that's why they say use a dedicated brush.
Should have at least two.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about all this is you can make it as complicated or as easy as you want. Just know that there's the
Very elite.
very elite way to do it, and there's the let's get it done kind of way to do it. So it's all what's going to work for you. So don't make it, if you just want to go wax and you're doing your race, Badger State, Berkey, you know, Bear Chase, whatever your event is that you really love to do, if you just go do that event and just have a good time, then don't spend 6 hours on your wax. You know, if you're trying to get into the first wave, you know, and you know, you might want to spend some time futzing with this, you know, because you know everybody else in that wave's doing it. And so if you don't do it, you're at a disadvantage.
Or you pay the $100 and have it done.
Hey. That's always a good. So here, fast wax's block, actually, it's just a powder that's been pressed into a block. So it actually comes out more like a powder. See that? And so powders, they actually used to come in little salt shakers, and you'd shake it on. And then you'd get your iron. You crank that baby up. Everybody brought their mask, right? No. This stuff you don't want to breathe in.
The high florals or the low florals as well?
The pure florals.
Pure
Yeah, you
florals.
don't want to do that.
What about the
You
low
guys will be
florals?
okay. You just don't want to be like, you know.
What about the low florals? Is there anything?
No, any of those, low florals and high florals that are in bar form, you really won't have a big problem with them. Now there's studies coming out saying if you wax skis daily, like me, it's probably a good idea to wear a mask. It's just like smoking, you know. You're taking chemicals into your lungs that shouldn't be there. So everybody actually kind of gather around because this happens.
No, you got a mask on.
This happens real quick. So like right here, what you're gonna look for is right behind here. You'll see this. There'll be dancing sparkles. No joke. Come on, baby. There we go.
See, if you pay
Yeah.
enough money, you get the wax to
See that?
entertain you.
That's the bond. So it's bonding to the wax underneath when that happens. But you see how slow that iron was moving? You see how hot
Get
that
the heat
gets?
into it, huh?
So that's the disadvantage of doing it this way. You have to heat it to a certain temperature to bond this, and it's dangerous to your ski and to you. And
What temperature was that iron at, Matt?
160, 150, 160, somewhere in there. Celsius. Celsius.
Celsius. Wow.
Maxed out, basically, on that iron.
And can you just repeat the cautionary about using such a hot iron on your ski? What does it do to the structure? Or
So what it does is you're risking melting your base at that point. So if you come up here and touch this, it's still very hot. You know?
when you say melting the base, you mean the ski itself or the wax that's in the base?
No, the plastic P-Tex itself. You're risking it. The other thing you're risking is disbonding. So your glues heat up to a certain temperature, and I've seen skis go, you know, the base just peels away because they've had it too hot. So you don't really see it too much anymore. But
So now this last one you used, the white powder, that's the same as the other one you put on.
yeah, so that's Fast Wax's version of
Yeah.
the Toco Blue. So
So the advantage of the Toco Blue is you can use the cork.
you can use the cork. You can use the cork with this as well.
Oh,
They tell you they actually say use a roto cork and thermal pad. I just wanted to show you, this doesn't do the sparkle dealy. This one does. So this is more like the old pure florals that we used, 15 years ago. This is the new era where we just cork it in and go. Okay. So
and that'll last years. I mean, you barely put any on.
yeah, you buy one of these, so it's $120 for this thing, but you're gonna use it for the next 5 Berkeys, or if you race a lot, you'll go through one a season maybe of that specific color that you're using a lot that year. So this year it would be the blue. So it's expensive, but let's say you become the wax guy for the group of friends that you hang out with. You all split it. Everybody throws $40 in the pot, and then you go and you buy your wax, and then you do the wax, and you keep the leftovers. There's gonna be a lot left over on that bad boy.
Right.
Unless you're doing like 15 pairs of skis or something.
So Matt, can you just review? You did a paraffin. You had a base wax on.
Yep.
And then you did a paraffin wax.
Yep.
And then you did a low floral.
Yeah. Then you do your low floral.
And then you did a pure floral.
Then well, it's supposed to go low floral, high floral, pure floral.
Oh.
Yeah. I kind of skipped a step because we just don't have all the time in the world tonight. So
Okay.
That's all.
Wow.
So yeah, if you're doing an event, it's layer, layer, layer. Unless it's a very cold or a very specific condition, then they'll say, just do one and do a low floral. And,
And you do a couple coats of that low floral and you let it sit like 45 minutes between.
you can soak it by passing your iron over it a couple times, and it just helps it stay in the base a little.
Now, on the low and high florals, what temperature is your iron on those?
The low and high florals, it depends on the temperature of the wax. Is it warm wax, it'll be a lower temperature, because
Okay.
warm waxes will melt at a lower temperature.
Okay.
If it's a cold wax, it'll be a higher temperature iron, because it's just a harder wax, it'll take more
Right.
heat to melt it.
But the pure floral, you went maxed. You
Pure
maxed
florals,
out.
It goes, it's hot, it's
Okay.
140 degrees or higher. Celsius.
So you could have done the same thing with the fast wax using that cork.
Yep.
thing, so.
Yep. So now that's a fast ski.
Nobody will keep them.
Now, did you,
The other one's not waxed though. so
Matt, you didn't do the back end of the ski. Did I just miss it, or did you join?
No, I just did the whole ski with the Toco, and then I was just giving an example of what
Okay.
the other one, so I just did the tip.
Okay, but you would do the whole ski, no?
I would do the whole ski, yeah. Yep. All right, any questions on any of that? That's how you waste a lot of wax right there.
Yeah, it's all on the floor.
Yeah.
So you
Oh,
pay
yeah.
all that money and it's all on the floor.
Yeah. So I used to have customers who are like, I saved that. And I
Put
use
the
it.
dirt back in it.
All right, yeah. Taking all the floor dirt and putting it into my ski. Not really the way to make it as fast as you can. So, but again, you know, it's you get what you get out of it, what you put into it, and you know, if you're not a high-end racer, you don't have to do this. You know, this is just if you do now, you understand what it takes, and there you go.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I think so.
So if there's any other questions, I can take them. Otherwise, we can go have another beer, right?
Right on.
Now I brought my scraper and I